Hi, everyone. I'm Erica DiPerini-Sugars. I'm the Director of Programs for the Austin Film Society, and I am pleased to have the opportunity to chat with our co-director of the documentary film Our Time Machine, as Leo Chiang. Hi, Leo.
Hi, Erica. Great
I
to
know
be
it.
here.
I know it's early for Leo, who is now in Taiwan currently. So, thanks for coming into Texas to see us. The film is currently streaming on our AFS virtual cinema platform, and it was also co-directed by filmmaker Young Sun, who is based in Beijing and will not be here for this particular Q&A. But our screening is also in partnership with the Alzheimer's Association, the Texas chapter, and Maxine, who is here, will join us a little bit for part of this conversation. So thank you all for being here, and congratulations on the film. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. I've been tracking the film for a while now, Leo, in different capacities, but congratulations. It's so beautiful and so like visually and emotionally engaging. I still cried even though I knew the film. And it was, I know that it premiered at Tribeca Film Festival
Yeah,
last year, right, in 2019,
2019.
and then has screened on at a lot of film festivals over
Yeah,
the year.
we,
Yeah,
we've
and
had a
then
we've had a fabulous festival run. I know that this year has been really difficult for a lot of filmmakers. Once the pandemic hit, a lot of the exhibition spaces and events were canceled. So we were lucky that we actually had a quite a full festival run. We played at over 60 film festivals around the world. And I was able to attend many of them. It was very exciting to see the different audiences overreacting to this film, from different culture and different languages.
great. And then still, playing in this sort of virtual cinema space now. Tell me about the collaboration with Yang.
So Young, it's actually, I think before we come on, we're talking a little bit about fate, about how things are meant to be. And this project was definitely like that. Young, who was only 25 years old when we started this film a few years back, was actually the person that met our main subject, Ma Liang, first. Young he splits his time between Beijing and Shanghai. And when Ma Liang was starting his project, developing his stage performance, he was looking for somebody to document the process, to make a film about it. And through a common friend, Young was connected to it. And Young was just really moved by the swimming pool story, which is a very prominent element in our film. And he, was really happy to be a part of that project, but he was also really inexperienced. He had not uh, just finished film school not too long ago before that. So he was actively looking for a collaborator. He had brought a project here actually to Taipei in 2015, late 2015, for a pitching forum. After he's been working on it for a couple months, and I happened to be one of the mentors at that forum, and when I saw the little bit of material that he had, I was so incredibly moved by the idea of the project and by what he had already captured that I really wanted to be a part of it. And funny enough, our executive producer Jean Chen, who a lot of folks in the documentary world knows, was exactly the same thing. She was there. We both reacted to the project the same way. So we actually both came on the project at the same time, and pretty quickly Young and I decided to collaborate both as directors and producers, because being the older person of the collaboration, I really brought the perspective that's very similar to Marianne's perspective. We're about the same age, Marianne and I. So it felt like a really great fit to work on it together.
Yeah, I know that Young has said in other interviews that he was really just looking for to make a film about art, the impact of art, and there is like that sub-genre, I would say, of films that are about artists and their art, and they're very popular, right? You see them all over the place. How do you feel like this fits into that sort of genre of film, and how is it different, do you think?
Impact of art. Well, I think we would have been happy if that ended up being the film, but as we were moving along, I feel like we, you know, I think especially me because I am the same age as Ma Liang, and I really, in many ways, felt very connected to what he was experiencing. You know, as somebody who's also working in the creative field, as somebody who's also coming into his middle age, as somebody who is starting to see, his parents age. I mean, my parents actually are in great health, and they're not having the same issues as my aunt's father. But I'm thinking about it, right? I'm thinking that, God forbid, maybe that will be me, and what am I going to do? And I'm also thinking about um, me and my relationship to my work. I'm wondering what does it all mean, and am I really, making as much impact with my work and with my life as I hoped that I would be. So all those elements really kind of came to the surface and in some ways became more important than just as not I'm not dismissing sort of films about art because they're really beautiful and they're really powerful. But for us, that was one of the two main elements of the story that the story about the artist, the story about a son, the story about somebody who's coming into a really pivotal, transitional period in his life. Those elements also became really, really important, sort of as important as the impact of art itself.
Yeah, it seems like those are the elements that sort of multi-layer of the themes is what makes that much more accessible, right, to people across the world, I would say, and the universal stories of parents and sons and family and duty, I think definitely come out. Um, Mel Young's father is an artist in his own right, very famous artist, director, opera director, like during the Cultural Revolution and somewhat after in China. How much historical context did you feel like you needed to provide um, or expand on for like a wider audience, people who weren't familiar?
Funny that you asked that. That was actually one thing that we really spent a lot of time to figure out. And I think that in most storytelling, exposition and background is always kind of a struggle. Oftentimes that that's information, but that's not necessarily story. That's not necessarily um, you know uh, uh, because when we were telling the story, we knew that the present day forward moving stories of the production of the play and also the evolution, the changing of the family dynamic were the main focus, right? So what we ended up decided to do was to just tell enough of the background of the history, of my aunt's father's, experience with the Cultural Revolution, for instance, just enough so people can understand the context of their experience now moving forward. We had versions where there are much longer scenes about Ma Ke, my aunt's father's work,
Mm-hmm.
but it always felt like, or you know, the film becomes a different animal. The storytelling sort of gets shifted towards a way that wasn't necessarily more interesting, than just for us to kind of stay in present and focus on the current day story. So we end up just, with just really only one sequence, combining both the father's experience as an artist, but also the father and son relationship and how it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of strained in the younger days, which sets up the need for Ma Liang to want to really connect with his father and collaborate with his father, and seeing this as possibly the last opportunity to do so.
Mm-hmm. I think what's also interesting is just a moment where you realize that they're working in such different um, mediums, right? And the father sort of identifies that he doesn't understand quite the medium that his son is working in, but they're both wonderful artists, right, in their own right. And his father's really proud of the kind of artist that he's become. Did Was that something that was sort of sort of teased out along the way? Was there always sort of an artistic tension ever? Because this is a story about like two artists, not one, right? Like in the same
Right.
family. I was
Yeah.
curious if that ever happened.
I think that they never really. So one of the things that Ma Liang always says is that Dad used to joke, especially sort of when Ma Liang became a teenager and started to show interest in art. He would always joke about how you know, they would work together. Ma Liang would design, would be the art director or the stage designer, and Ma Liang's dad would direct, and then Mom, who's actually a well-known actress, in her days, would act in it. It would be a family production, and it was something that Ma Liang really hung on to and wanted to make that the idea sort of come to reality. But I don't think they really ever sat down and consider the struggle that they would have if they were really to collaborate. They came of age, both as people and as artists in very different eras. I mean, I don't know if folks outside of China really understand how quickly things shift from generation to generation, especially in the last half a century. I mean, I guess um, maybe for the Americans, it's kind of like before the 50s or before the 60s and after the 60s, right? It's much more of a seismic cultural shift. And to connect across that generation is actually, I mean, I can imagine it's quite difficult.
Yeah. The majority, and you mentioned this before, the majority of the play, I mean, the film is really showing the artistic process and the creation of this play, which becomes largely ambitious as you see it unfold. I mean, how long did you follow this process? How long did this process take? You said several years, but like, was that something that you guys entered into? You realized that this was going to be much larger and longer than you
Um,
thought?
we started in 2015. The other, so some of our footage actually came from another filmmaker who had been following Ma Liang around for a few months prior to that. But we started in 2015 and we shot until we finished the film in 2018, basically. But the last year was we were waiting for. I feel like I'm giving away the ending, but that's okay, I suppose. The last year we were basically waiting for the baby to be born, right?
Yes.
We knew that was going to be the conclusion of the film. So the production of the play itself, I think, took about 3 years or so. Um, I don't, I'm not quite sure what we were anticipating when we enter into this story. And honestly, I think for a while we weren't totally sure that there was enough story to make a feature length film. We thought that I mean, because you get that with the puppets, you could only show so much before people kind of lose interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a visually very interesting thing, but then you get desensitized to it if you show too much of it, like anything else. So we were not sure what's going to happen with the family. We were not sure what's going to happen to my own life, and when his personal life starts to sort of take these twists and turns, and when the play starts to experience some difficulties, we felt like we had to kind of follow it through. And it was also one of those instances, as documentary filmmakers, you kind of dream of some ideal ending to any
Mm-hmm.
story, and they never happen, right? But for this one, we sat around, we joked like, oh, wouldn't it be great if he sort of gets married and have kids, and we can tell these like beautiful, stories, like that sort of one generation after another, and it really changes his perspective. And that's actually what really did happen. Um, so we were willing to wait. It felt like the extra time was worth the wait.
Yeah, like yeah, he definitely had that perfect ending in his life as his life progressed. Um, in the film itself sort of unfolds chronologically, and you see seasons pass, and you're sort of following him along this trajectory of creating the play. Um, but you also kind of structure. It's interesting that there's a structure here that's around like chapters of the pieces that are significant in the pieces of art that are significant in the play. Can you talk about that choice? It's something that I really noticed, and it struck me as being really interesting.
Are you talking about the letters,
No, it's
where,
more like you have a chapter where it's like the time machine or the plane, you know?
okay. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
about.
Well, so the overall story for us is really, we told the story through Manliang's perspective, and we felt like his attitude or how he felt about what he's doing in relationship to his father evolves as the story unfolds, right? At
Mm-hmm.
first, there is a lot of excitement and in some ways some naivete about what this work really is. That he really could potentially use this piece of work to connect with his father and to be able to, save his father from getting worse. And then when he realizes that that was not a realistic expectation, right? So the first part is about the building of the time machine.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he realized that that was not the realistic expectation, um, the tone shifted to be maybe a little bit more about desperation. That he felt like at that point all he could do is to try to connect with his father as much as possible, and maybe try to make the work complete and then share it to the world before that his father is cognitively having a hard time saying that word, not able to connect with the play anymore. And then it went into sort of uh, resignation, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that there is a little bit of disappointment and sadness, and a little bit of giving up of the idea that he was going to be able to make this great collaboration work, and he realized that he just can't fight against time. He cannot fight against
Mm-hmm.
what his father is experiencing. But at the same time, beautiful things were still happening in his life, so that led to the final chapter where it's a celebration that he learns to embrace, he learns to accept, what people may consider the cruelty of time. He found beauty in it. And I think that those pieces were echoed by, the highlighting or the production of a certain piece of key prop in the
Mm-hmm.
film between the time machine and then the airplane and etc. So we use those almost as punctuation throughout the film.
That's great. And you did talk about little. You mentioned just now about the the dear child, the sort of letter that frames the whole film. Can you talk about that? Was that in collaboration with Mel Young, or did you kind of think about it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was an idea that we came up with because, we were starting to use a lot of interviews, sit down interviews with Ma Liang for those pieces because we wanted to kind of get inside his head. But when we do that, it felt wrong. It felt like it really took us out of this really experiential storytelling style that we were presenting, right? Which are mostly like we were watching our characters interacting in scenes mostly. We were following the story along forward, and it's weird to sort of stop and in this sort of conventional sit down interview. So we started to think about like, well, what else can we do to both still get inside of Manang's head in these moments and really for, to allow the audience to get really close to him, but at the same time to not have this traditional interview style. So Manan has also he's published a few books of essays.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so we started to think, oh, maybe we could take these first person essays that he's written and turn them into letters, and where he would actually read it and it would be, dear child, we don't know who the child is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be it could be the puppet, it could be, sort of his work. It could be him reading a letter from his father to himself. And it could be, as we find out later on, his unborn child that he's speaking to. And those were also moments where we took more liberty in terms of the visual style. We used like a lot of dolly shots. We use more stylized lighting. We used you know uh, material or footage that probably wouldn't normally be considered, you know, traditional documentary. Um, Also, we really wanted to highlight sort of the magical realism
Mm-hmm.
inside of his work, and we felt like there's a way for us to bring out that element in our work as well. So in those Dear Child letter sections, there were also some of that, you know, that sense of magical realism in those moments as well.
And how did he, was he sort of collaborate? I mean, I'm sure he was very busy with his own project that he was doing, but in terms of like the collaboration, I know you use a lot of his imagery, a lot of his puppets, maybe,
Yeah,
was he sort of just
he
open
sort of
to it?
just handed it to us, and we did it. It was, he actually didn't see any cuts at all. He didn't see the film at all until our premiere in New York at Tribeca. He sat down and
Oh,
watched
wow.
with his wife, with the audience all together. It was a very emotional experience. Um, I don't know, you know, I mean, working with another artist, you know, it could have gone either way, right? It could have been either that they're super sort of worry about how their work will be represented, and they wanted to be involved to make sure things are done the way they want it to, or the second scenario, which is what happened, was that maybe he trusted so much, maybe he understood the how challenging and how difficult the process is, that he just wanted to trust us and support us and allowed us to do what we thought was best, you know. And that's kind of what he did. He just really never interfere, or he never wanted to, you know, have a deeper collaboration. He just kind of trusted us to tell the story.
Um, so a large theme, obviously a large issue that this film deals with is memory and loss of memory. And I want to introduce our partner, Maxine Vieira from the Alzheimer's Association. And Maxine, can you tell us a little bit about the work that you all are doing at the Alzheimer's Association?
Absolutely. We provide services to the families that are living with Alzheimer's disease, meaning that they either have a diagnosis or they are care partners in caring for somebody who already has the disease. We have support groups available to all that want to participate, as well as educational programs. Our mission is very much to have one day have a world without Alzheimer's. As we grow and expand the services that we provide, we have become the second largest funders of research worldwide, outside of the U.S. National Institute of Health and outside of China. And so it is important for us that we find a cure for Alzheimer's disease. Unfortunately, it still is the sixth leading cause of death as of today, of complications of Alzheimer's disease. And it's the one disease that still does not have a means of prevention or treatment, effective treatment to reverse the effects of Alzheimer's disease. Everything that we do is available to our community for free. We don't charge a penny. Our fundraising comes about because a walk, which is happening on September the 26th. And so when we see a project like this, it is very important that touches upon, you know, cultural divides and how we can bring about or lessen the stigma of having a diagnosis is very important for us, because we understand that, you know, every culture has their own different ways of dealing with dementia. And we're like very tight knit communities, and we often forget that we have more in common than we do have differences in dealing with this horrible disease. And we hold dear to our families. And I mentioned in the comments that as I was listening to Leo speak about, you know, the son and the father coming together and having this shared history and whatnot, is like that's the tragedy of Alzheimer's disease, is that we lose the history of our loved ones. It's every day that we start to lose what they, you know, what they've been through, what they brought to the table, how important and involved they are in our lives. And it's just one of those things that we wish it would no longer exist at some point.
Mhm.
In a nutshell, that's what we do.
Thank you, Maxine. Leo, why was it important for you to partner with groups like Maxine's group on this with this film?
You know, as we were showing the film over and over again, we've have caregivers come up to us and told us how, you know, that we were able to capture, and you know, we're filmmakers, we're not experts in dementia and in Alzheimer's, and to have folks who are living, you know, with this disease come up to us and told us how we capture certain moments that perfectly describe the experience of living with it, we knew that this could be something that could be very useful. And you know, Maxine was mentioning the cultural differences in terms of, you know, families, communities dealing with Alzheimer's. In the Chinese community, dementia was something that was seen for a long time as shameful and taboo, and there was a very sort of nasty term in Chinese to describe this illness. It describes the old folks as like basically, you know, sort of confused and stupid, right? For lack of better translation. And it's only in recent times, especially in China, where there is starting to, you know, have this infrastructure that's coming together to support families who are suffering through the illness. And you know, I just really felt like our film could be a part of that, you know, that work, and our film could become a tool for people, you know, both in Asia but also in the U.S., where the Asian American community could potentially use this piece to really get conversations started, and to maybe, you know, help the caregivers and help the families open up and seek help from Alzheimer's Association in all the different chapters around the country.
That's great. And I do think that, yes, what I think the thing about being with this family so closely is that you do capture these moments that show the difficulties and the challenges, but also the desire of the family to help each other, you know, care for the father. Were there times, and you see his decline and you see him not recognizing family members and places, were there any particular challenges you faced in filming this and following the parents?
You know, we actually had we actually had quite a easy time following the parents. I mean, not so much sort of the experience of, you know, being confronted with these really intimate, difficult situations that families going through, but in terms of how willing and how kind the parents are to us. Yang, you know, because he's in Shanghai, he did the majority of the shooting, and they really treated him like a grandchild. They were really excited to have him around. I think a lot of it is because he really, you know, they really saw us as the next generation of artists who's, you know, interested in telling their story and sharing their legacy. And that's something that they're quite proud of, and they're really thrilled to have us around. But in terms of, I mean, this is this is sort of I guess filmmakers will understand this. I hope it's not a sort of a horrible thing to say, but you know, because the father, you know, with the illness, it would repeat the story over and over again, and you know, it's heartbreaking for the family. But from a filmmaker's perspective, it ended up giving us a lot of choices in terms of, like, you know, we could have him tell the swimming pool story at home. We can have him tell a swimming pool story, you know, at the rehearsal hall. We can have him tell a swimming pool story at night, during the day, outside, inside. So it gave us a lot of choices in terms of when we would like to present a certain part of his story. So that was a interesting situation that kind of came about.
Yeah, I can imagine that you're able to have the story told more than once. That opportunity is really valuable. But I'm sure that there were things that he maybe couldn't articulate that you just, you know, didn't go with or go for.
Well, I think that was the story, that the fact that he wasn't able to articulate his feeling in a complex, you know, meaningful way about what he was seeing in his son's work, was the story. That was the reality, and that was what we captured, and that those were moments that ended up in the film, and those were the moments that Ma Liang reacted to, and it gave him the understanding more about the progression of the illness. I mean, you know, Ma Liang, we were just checking with Ma Liang just even last week, and he's saying that, you know, the family is not saying that you know, dad doesn't really recognize him or remember Ma Liang so much anymore. He just calls Ma Liang like the big guy. The big guy's here. I can't imagine what that would be like as a child to be in that situation. I think that the family has really wonderful sense of humor, and they really are finding, again, finding humor and finding beauty in those moments, in the moments of the grandfather meeting the granddaughter, in the moment where, I think it's funny that his father calls him the big guy, but yeah, I think that just the other piece is also that the fact that unlike some of the other illnesses, Alzheimer's and dementia it's the caretakers could potentially be doing that work for years, right? With the medicine being improving all the time in terms of maintaining people's physical health, but also with Alzheimer's not having any kind of the cure or any kind of medical ways to even sustain, sort of hold the condition from deteriorating. This could go on for many, many years, and it must really impact the relationships of the family, both emotionally and also, financially or logistically. Those are incredible challenges.
So how is the family now? And I know you mentioned you checked in with them and given there's been time since the film is released, but also, just people are growing older and things are progressing. How are they all doing?
The parents are actually doing okay. Father is about to turn 90, and they are still, in the same retirement home, where they seem to, it seemed like it was absolutely the right space and the right choice for them. During the beginning of the COVID outbreak, it was difficult because the facility has to be in lockdown, so the families weren't able to see each other. So Madame and the granddaughter wasn't able to visit with the grandparents for quite a while. But all things considered, I think they're all doing quite well. Baby Dum Dum is now 2 years old and is speaking. We did a Q&A list last weekend where little puppet Makuji showed up, and they just had a blast playing with each other. And Mariam kept saying, "Hey, here's your older brother," and they were. It was just lovely. She was tickling him, and he was, kind of reacting, and they really had a great old time. So, yeah. So life is moving on, but family, it seemed like they're coping with it quite well.
Yeah. And then whatever happened with the play? I know that sort of the film closes, and as the film comes, the play comes to the end of its first run.
Yeah. So the play, this part we didn't really, explain super clearly in the film, but the play is owned by the production company, the producer who we met really briefly, the investor in the film. And they actually have decision-making power in terms of what happens to it and where it goes. So, the play did come back for a couple shorter runs in China. They're continuing to try and find international partners. It's just a very expensive production, and even though it's really beautiful and it's really intricate, it's tricky to find collaborators who's willing to front the cost, and especially the idea of taking it on for international tour. Because there's like a good 20 puppeteers plus the staff. It's actually quite expensive piece. So they're continuing to figure out what to do with it. It hasn't gone away, but it hasn't really taken off either. So so we're constantly hearing updates in terms of what next they were thinking about doing with the play. For Ma Liang, after he finished Papa Time Machine, the play, he built this really fabulous large puppet, which we just got some video of recently that I've actually been posting out on social media. Because I think one of the reactions that he had was that he wanted his puppet to be interacting with the audience in a much closer proximity, to kind of actually be physically interacting. And then after that, Madang has gone back to do more photography work. He actually just had an opening in Shanghai this last week, so he's been really busy. It's been hard to track him down to
Mhm.
get him on some of these Q&As that we've been doing. But it's really great that he's so busy. He was planning on doing a large scale photography project in Japan this year, and that was canceled or was pushed back. So I think that he's not planning on doing that next year. In the meantime, it's very funny because Madang is quite active on Weibo, which is the Chinese Twitter. It's the microblog, and he has millions of followers. He's a very much of an influencer on that platform. Um, so if you look at his old blog, it was like work and ideas and philosophical musing, and then all of a sudden it became baby, 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 baby. And then he started to do this great, he had a series where he photoshopped picture of baby Deng Deng into these masterpieces, like as Venus, as the girl who's picnicking on the riverbank, on a Sunday afternoon. And he has this whole series of baby Deng Deng in these masterpieces. So he's also doing fun little projects that has to do with his family as well.
Oh,
I
that's
think
great.
they're having a great old time.
And so what's next for the film?
We're going to be finishing this virtual cinema run, and then it's going to be on PBS, on POV, which we're very excited about. And then it's going to be released on iTunes and Amazon in the digital space. But we're also hoping that we will continue to collaborate with organizations like Alzheimer's Association America, and also the various scholars and educational institutions that study, dementia, that work in the gerontology space, that work in, Asian American spaces, where we could, write some material, maybe, some study guide to really package this film as something that can be used for teaching as well. The work keeps going. Manang has his baby Deng Deng, and we have our baby, which is this film, and we're gonna keep taking care of the baby, until it goes out into the world. So that's what we're planning on doing.
Well, thank you so much for spending the time. And thank you to Maxine for being here. She also posted a helpline that's available 24/7, and we'll be putting that out there as well in terms of it's managed by master level social workers and licensed professionals, and anyone who needs some support can call that line.
Yeah,
But
and I really want to encourage everybody to visit the Alzheimer's Association website and sign up to sponsor one of the walks. They are really incredibly important. They do so much to continue to provide resources so people can keep fighting Alzheimer's and hopefully find a cure in the near future.
Great. And the film itself is still available on our virtual platform, as well as other virtual platforms at cinemas across the United States. So please see it if you haven't yet. And thank you, Leo. Thanks for having
Thank you, Erica.
I love having you here.
Maxine.
Thank you
Yes.
very much, Leo, for that, for advising people or encouraging people to call. I do believe that films like this really empower caregivers to step up and seek the much needed resources all the time. We're here to provide the services. Our helpline is available 24/7. It doesn't matter what question you have, you can always call it to get the support system that you need. And this is phenomenal. I'm looking forward to watching this movie and making sure that I learn as much. And I also want to say that the arts are so important because it does help somebody with dementia. You can
Mm.
have a puppet and it can help somebody really relive a story, or even de-escalate behaviors. You can have painting, watercolors, whatever that may be, and it does help. I mean, music helps. The only thing that I often jest about is like, okay, so I'm Gen X, what is music going to look like for me when I'm older and God forbid I have dementia? Like, am I going to be listening to Nine Inch Nails? I actually, I'm like, what does that look like, you know? Because that is my generation.
Yeah.
So
Why not, right?
Yeah.
why not,
No,
right?
yes.
So I might as well on my
Absolutely.
podcast, like my pot list now, and get my music list, ready. But these are the things that do make and help de-escalate behaviors on our loved ones. And again, just breaking through that social stigma and making sure that how we respect our loved ones when they're in the throes of this disease is a reflection how others are going to respect them and not be dismissive of them. And so it is very important that we also respect their journey so that they can be respected by others as well.
Thank you. That's great.